Hey YouTubers, DIYDan here, and today we're going to be working on the Toyota MR2. I don't know if you remember, but in the last video when the timing belt broke, I noticed the AC compressor was bad, and I was going to install a new one at that time, but as you saw in the video, they sent me the wrong one. But today, I got the right one sitting right here. I'll leave a link in the description if you guys need one for your AW11. And I also got a new receiver dryer. So today we're going to install a new AC compressor, receiver dryer, and charge up the air. So that way I have some nice cold air for this summer. If that stuff interests you, stay tuned. Since I'll be running R134A, there will be a few things that I'll have to do to this AC compressor in order to make it compatible with the refrigerant. My AC compressor came pre-filled with ND oil 6, which is an R12 compliant oil. So I'll need to empty this oil out and refill it with ND oil 8 or PAG 46, which are both R134A compliant oils. In order to get all the old oil out, all I'm going to do is remove these Allen bolts that hold on these cover plates, and then I'll flip it over upside down and let all the oil drain out. Alright guys, I got the AC compressor all emptied out with the oil, and then I put it into this container with a mark, so that way I know exactly how much of the PAG 46 oil I need to put back in it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Now that the AC compressor is topped up with the correct oil, there's just one more thing I have to do before I install the manifold, and that is to change out all the rubber O-rings. Since I don't know if the O-rings that came with my AC compressor are R134A compatible, and I have no way of telling if they are, I went ahead and purchased a new set that I know for a fact are compatible. In most cases, black O-rings are for R12 and green O-rings are for R134A. But to confuse things even more, some manufacturers have made black seals that are also R134A compatible. Wasn't that great? So if you don't know which set you have, it's probably cheap insurance to spend an extra $15 on a new seal kit that you know is compatible with the refrigerant you plan on using. With my new O-rings installed, I can now install the manifold and tighten the bolts. If you don't have a lift, don't worry, because you can still easily do this job with a set of jack stands. Time to install the AC compressor and tighten the bolts. I was unable to get a video of this, but I did remove the hose to the oil cooler to help with the install. By removing this line to the oil cooler, I had plenty of room to position the compressor in its mounting location.
Looks like you're having a party here.
Yeah.
Before I install the hoses to the AC compressor, I replaced both O-rings and lubricated them with PAG 46 oil. Next, I install the high and low pressure hoses to the AC compressor and tighten down the bolts to them. You can't mix these hoses up on the AC compressor as they are sized differently. I installed my AC belt from below the car. I started by putting the belt over the tensioner pulley first and then working my way down. This is the location of the belt tensioner. I tightened my belt tensioner pulley until there was no more than a ½ inch of slack on the belt. Alright, we got the belt tension on the AC compressor, so the next thing I'm going to do is reinstall the oil cooler line. Alright guys, we got the AC compressor installed, all hooked up, so the next thing we want to do is replace that receiver dryer. Here's my new replacement. Even came with the proper seals for the hoses, so let's go ahead and get this swapped out. After I installed the O-rings, I also lubricated them with PAG 46 oil. Now that all the new parts are installed, it's now time to evacuate the system. The evacuation process is very important because it removes air and moisture from the AC system. It's very important to remove moisture from an AC system because it can react with the oil and refrigerant, forming hydrochloric acid. This hydrochloric acid can corrode lines, clog screens, and damage other AC components. I purchased this AC recharge kit from Amazon, and it includes everything in order to properly recharge my AC. The kit includes a vacuum pump, manifold gauges, and all the necessary hoses and connectors. I also purchased a small kitchen scale so I can monitor how much refrigerant I'm putting in. Alright guys, I'm now ready to connect my manifold gauge and hoses to the AC system. They're real easy to connect. So the first thing you want to do is just make sure your valves are in the closed position. So I'm turning them. Yep, everything's closed. So your blue line is your low pressure hose. Your yellow is your feeder. So you'll either use that to draw a vacuum on the system or to put Freon in the system. And then the red hose here is for the high pressure line. So to connect the blue line, all you do is just put it to the low pressure connector right here, which on an AW11 is in the passenger side footwell. And then your high pressure connector is right behind the spare tire. So I've got all those connected. So the next thing I want to do is just slowly open up the valves on these. So you just turn them until you start to feel just a little bit of resistance. You don't really want to mash down on them. So I feel a little bit of resistance there, so I'm done. So I've got everything connected. I've got my yellow feeder line connected to my vacuum pump since we want to draw the moisture and air out of the system. And I've got the exhaust cap removed. It had a little cap over here on the top. Alright, everything's connected, so the next thing I'm going to do is turn on the vacuum pump and start opening these valves. and the gauges are now reading 30 inches of mercury. So I'm going to go here and just let it sit there and evacuate for probably about 45 minutes or so. Okay, so it's been 45 minutes, so I'm ready to close these valves and turn off the vacuum pump. I'm going to let this sit here for about an hour to make sure I don't have any leaks. The AC system is now sealed under vacuum and should hold 30 inches of mercury unless there is a leak. If I come back after an hour and the needles are sitting at 0, then I know I have a leak somewhere that will need to be repaired. Alright, it's been 60 minutes and the gauges are still holding 30 inches of mercury, which tells me we do not have a leak in the system, which means we can move on to the next step. So I went ahead already and connected our feeder line to my can of refrigerant here. And the next thing we have to do is we got to purge any air that's in this line out. So we're going to use that Schrader valve right here to do that. Let me show you how that's done. To start releasing refrigerant out of this can and into this line, you just turn this knob counterclockwise. So we got that loose. And then to purge all the air that's inside here out, so we just get straight refrigerant, you just use this Schrader valve. Next, I start the car and turn on the AC system to max cold. With the car still running, I open the high and low pressure valves on the manifold to start filling the AC system with refrigerant. After about 30 seconds, the AC compressor should kick on. My 1985 Toyota MR2 had an original fill capacity between 0.7 and 0.9 kilograms for R12. You'll want to use between 70 and 80% of the original R12 fill capacity when filling with R134A. When you do the math, 0.7 kilograms equals 700 grams, and 70% of 700 grams is 490 grams. So the minimum amount of refrigerant that I'll be using is 490 grams. The maximum amount of refrigerant is 720 grams. With my can of refrigerant on the kitchen scale and the valves open, I just watch the grams count down until I'm within the allowable range. For my AC system, I stopped at 560 grams because I had really cold air. The AC is starting to get really cold now. As of right now, I have about 500 grams of refrigerant in the system, and I'll stop once I reach 560. So my AC is all filled with refrigerant. AC is blowing nice and cold, so I went ahead and closed these valves off. So now we just need to disconnect them from the system. So I'm going to close this one, pull up, remove it. Do the same thing on the high pressure side. Counterclockwise to close. Now it's cleanup time. Another thing you'll want to watch out for while filling your AC system with refrigerant is the low and high side pressure readings. These pressure readings can vary depending on the temperature outside. If your pressure readings aren't close to what is listed in this chart, then I would start troubleshooting the areas listed here. Just wrapping up the AC install on my 85 MR2. Boy, is it freezing in here. I've let the car run for about a half hour, just letting the AC cycle, and it just slowly keeps getting colder and colder. Right now I'm sitting right around like high 30s, low 40s on the gauge. I mean, it is freezing cold in here. So I made this video basically to help other AW11 owners out there. So if you guys got one of these cool cars and you want to get the AC going again, hopefully this video will help you. If you guys have any comments or questions, leave them down below. And if you'd like to see more MR2 related videos, make sure you hit that like button. So long, guys.